Jake Morrison stared at the message on his screen for the third time. The words didn't change, but he kept hoping they would. The red seal of Earth's United Colonial Authority glowed at the top of the document, making his small office on Mars feel even smaller. "Maya, you need to see this," he called to his chief engineer through the intercom. Maya Rodriguez wiped grease from her hands as she entered Jake's office. She had been fixing the water recycler again. Everything on Mars needed constant fixing. That was life in the colonies. Always one broken part away from disaster. "What's wrong now?" Maya asked, dropping into the worn chair across from Jake's desk. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her jumpsuit had oil stains that never seemed to wash out. Jake turned his screen toward her. "Read it." Maya's eyes moved across the official document. Her face grew pale as she read. 400% increase in resource shipments. "Jake, that's impossible. We can barely meet current demands." "I know," Jake said quietly. He rubbed his tired eyes. Being colony administrator for Mars Beta 7 meant carrying the weight of 50,000 lives on his shoulders. Some days that weight felt heavier than others. Maya grabbed a tablet from her tool belt and started calculating. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Numbers flew by as she worked through power consumption, water recycling rates, and food production statistics. "Jake, if we give Earth what they're asking for, we'll have 30% less power than we need. Our water systems will fail in 4 months. Food production will drop so low that people will start starving in 6 months." Jake had run the same calculations. He had hoped Maya would find an error in his math, some way to make it work. But the numbers were clear. Earth was asking them to choose between serving the homeworld and surviving. "Why do they need so much?" Maya asked. Jake pulled up another file on his computer. "It's for something called the Terra Revival Project. They want to fix Earth's climate problems by building massive atmospheric processors. The project needs resources from every colony in the system." "What about Earth's own resources? Apparently they're all tied up in the project planning and bureaucracy." Jake's voice carried a bitter edge. "According to this, colonies exist to serve the greater good of humanity, and the greater good lives on Earth." Maya stood up and paced around the small office. "There has to be someone we can talk to. Someone reasonable." "I tried." Jake pulled up his communication logs. "I sent 3 requests for a conference call with Colonial Secretary Helen Price. Her office finally responded yesterday." He played the recorded message. Helen Price's voice filled the room, crisp and cold as space itself. "Administrator Morrison, the quotas are not negotiable. Mars Beta 7, like all colonies, exists to support Earth's needs. If you cannot meet these requirements, perhaps we need to consider new leadership for your facility. The greater good of humanity requires sacrifice from those privileged enough to live among the stars." Maya stopped pacing. "Privileged? Does she know what it's like out here? When the dust storms hit last month, we had people working 18-hour shifts just to keep the air recyclers running." Jake knew Maya was thinking about her brother Carlos. He had died 2 years ago when a mining accident damaged the medical bay's life support. They couldn't get replacement parts fast enough from Earth. By the time the supply ship arrived, it was too late. "There's something else," Jake said. He hesitated, then activated his personal tablet. "Ben Carter brought this to me yesterday." Ben Carter worked in communications, monitoring the data streams that flowed between Earth and the colonies. It was routine work, mostly handling shipping schedules and administrative messages. But sometimes Ben noticed patterns that others missed. Ben's been tracking some encrypted communications from Earth. High-level stuff, way above normal colonial administration channels. He managed to decode part of it. Jake showed Maya the decrypted text. Her face went white as she read. The message talked about colonial resource extraction efficiency and population relocation timelines. It discussed abandoning depleted facilities once they were no longer useful. There was a reference to next phase colonization targets and the need to optimize human capital deployment. "They're planning to abandon us," Maya whispered. "Once we've given them everything we have, they'll move on to newer colonies, richer worlds. They see us as mining equipment, not people." Maya sank back into her chair. "My family has been here for 3 generations. My grandfather helped build the first atmospheric domes. This isn't just where we live, it's our home." Jake understood. His own parents had died building this colony. They had believed they were creating something permanent, a new branch of human civilization among the stars. Instead, they had been building a resource extraction facility with an expiration date. "What do we do?" Maya asked. Jake stared out the small window of his office. Red Martian landscape stretched to the horizon, broken by the silver domes and towers of the colony. 50,000 people lived under those domes, engineers like Maya, farmers who grew food in underground hydroponic gardens, teachers who educated children born under alien skies, doctors who kept everyone healthy in an environment that wanted to kill them. All of them depended on Jake to make decisions that would keep them alive. "I'm calling an emergency assembly," Jake said finally. "To discuss the quota increase? To discuss our options." Jake stood up and walked to the window. "Earth wants to treat us like equipment they can use up and throw away. Maybe it's time we reminded them that we're human beings." Maya joined him at the window. "Jake, what are you thinking?" He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. A hardness like the Martian rock beneath their feet. "I'm thinking that our ancestors came out here to build something better than what they left behind on Earth. Maybe we need to finish what they started." 3 hours later, Jake stood before the colony's main assembly hall. Every seat was filled and people stood along the walls. The air recycling system worked overtime to handle the crowd, creating a background hum that made Jake think of a beehive preparing to swarm. He explained Earth's demands. He showed them the calculations Maya had prepared. He told them about the encrypted messages Ben had decoded. When he finished speaking, the hall was silent for a long moment. Then Dr. Lisa Park, who ran the colony's medical facility, stood up. "What you're suggesting," she said carefully, "is that we refuse Earth's orders." "I'm suggesting we choose survival over servitude," Jake replied. An old miner named Tony Blake raised his hand. "My grandfather fought in the water wars on Earth. He used to say that sometimes the only choice left is the hardest one." More voices joined the conversation. Fear mixed with anger. Uncertainty battled with determination. These were people who had survived dust storms and equipment failures, who had built a civilization on a world that wanted them dead. They were tougher than Earth remembered. Finally, Maya stood up. "Earth made their decision about us a long time ago. Now we have to make ours." Jake looked out at the faces in the crowd. These were his people, his responsibility. Whatever came next, they would face it together. All in favor of rejecting Earth's quota increase and declaring colonial independence? Hands rose throughout the hall. Not all of them, but enough. More than enough. Jake Morrison, administrator of Mars Colony Beta 7, had just led his people across a line from which there was no return. Tomorrow he would send a message to Earth that would change everything. Tonight he would try to sleep knowing that he had just started a war. The message from Mars reached Europa Mining Station at 14:30 station time. Lisa Webb was reviewing maintenance reports when her communication officer, Ben Carter, burst into her office without knocking. "Director Webb, you need to see this immediately," Ben said. His face flushed with excitement. Lisa looked up from her paperwork. Ben was usually calm, the kind of person who handled crisis communications during mining accidents without breaking a sweat. Seeing him this worked up made her pay attention. "What is it, Ben?" "Mars Beta 7 has declared independence from Earth. They've rejected the new quotas and formed something called the Outer System Alliance. They're asking other colonies to join them." Lisa felt like the artificial gravity had just been turned off. "They did what?" Ben handed her his tablet. The message was encrypted using old mining codes that most colonies still used for routine communications. Jake Morrison's words were simple and direct. "Earth has decided we are expendable. We have decided we are not. Join us or face the future alone. The choice is yours, but choose quickly. Earth's response will not be gentle." Lisa read the message twice, then looked out through the thick windows of her station. Europa's ice surface stretched away under Jupiter's massive bulk, and she could see the lights of mining platforms scattered across the frozen moon. 3,000 people worked on those platforms, extracting water and rare minerals that kept Earth's economy running. "Ben, has Earth responded to this yet?" "Not officially. But I've been monitoring their military frequencies. They're mobilizing the home fleet. Admiral Grace Stone has been called back from patrol duties." Lisa knew that name. Grace Stone commanded Earth's largest battle group, the ships that kept the trade lanes secure and handled any serious problems in the outer system. If Earth was calling her back, they were planning to use force. "Get me a secure channel to the asteroid belt mining operations," Lisa said. I want to talk to Tony Blake. Tony Blake had been working the asteroid belt for 30 years. He commanded a fleet of mining ships that could strip an asteroid down to its core in a matter of weeks. His people were tough, independent, and they had no love for Earth's bureaucrats. The connection took 20 minutes to establish. When Tony's weathered face appeared on Lisa's screen, she could see the worry in his eyes. "Lisa, I was about to call you. Mars has gone crazy. They're talking about war with Earth. Are they crazy, Tony? Or are they the first ones to face reality?" Tony was quiet for a moment. In the background, Lisa could hear the constant noise of mining operations, the sound of machines tearing apart rocks that were older than Earth itself. "My quotas went up 300% last month," Tony said finally. "I've got ships held together with prayer and spare parts, and Earth wants me to double my output. Half my crews are working without proper safety equipment because we can't afford replacements." "It's the same everywhere," Lisa said. "Earth is squeezing us until we break. But war, Lisa? These are mining ships and cargo haulers. What are we supposed to fight with?" Before Lisa could answer, another voice cut into their conversation. "You fight with whatever you have because the alternative is death." Lisa's screen split to show a third face. Commander Amy Foster looked tired, but her voice was strong. Amy had been stationed on Ceres, the largest settlement in the asteroid belt, before Earth had recalled her for attitude problems. Instead of returning to Earth, she had resigned her commission and stayed in the belt. "Amy, how did you get on this channel?" Lisa asked. "Tony gave me the codes. I've been expecting this call." Amy's smile was grim. "Earth doesn't understand what they're dealing with. They think we're farmers and miners playing at rebellion. They're wrong." Amy explained what Lisa and Tony were just beginning to realize. The colonies had been building their own capabilities for decades, not because they planned to rebel, but because they had to survive. Mining ships could be converted to carry missiles. Cargo vessels could transport fighters. Industrial equipment could be reprogrammed for military use. "The home fleet is designed to fight other organized militaries," Amy said. "Ships in neat formations following predictable tactics. They've never faced an enemy that can hide in asteroid fields, that knows every piece of space rock between here and Mars, that can turn civilian infrastructure into weapons." "But can we actually win?" Lisa asked. "That's the wrong question," Amy replied. "The right question is, can we afford to lose?" Over the next 3 days, encrypted messages flowed between the colonies. Mars Beta 7's rebellion was spreading. The outer moons of Jupiter and Saturn reported similar quota increases from Earth. Mining operations throughout the asteroid belt faced impossible demands. Dr. Kevin Park, who had fled Earth's university system after criticizing colonial policies, became the unofficial coordinator of the growing alliance. Kevin was brilliant, the kind of mind that could see patterns others missed. He had been working on Titan, studying the moon's methane lakes when Mars declared independence. "Earth's weakness isn't military," Kevin explained during a colony-wide conference call. "It's psychological. They've been comfortable for too long. They think the colonies are just extensions of Earth, places where Earth people work for a while before going home. They don't understand that we are home." Jake Morrison joined the call from Mars. "Kevin's right. We're not fighting to go somewhere else. We're fighting to stay where we are. That gives us an advantage they can't match." Lisa found herself becoming part of something she had never expected. The colonies were forming a real government, the Outer System Alliance. Jake Morrison was chosen as the first president, not because he wanted the job, but because Mars had taken the first step. The Alliance's first official act was to send an ultimatum to Earth. The message was broadcast on all frequencies, so every ship and station in the system could hear it. "To the United Colonial Authority and the people of Earth, the Outer System Alliance formally requests the following changes to colonial policy. First, all quotas must be reduced to sustainable levels that allow colonies to maintain basic life support and safety margins. Second, colonies must be granted local autonomy over internal affairs. Third, colonial representatives must be given voting rights in Earth's government proportional to their population and economic contribution. We are willing to negotiate these terms in good faith. However, if Earth's response is military force, we will defend ourselves with every means at our disposal. We ask only for the right to survive and prosper as free human beings." Earth's response came 48 hours later. Admiral Greystone's voice was cold and official. "The home fleet is en route to Mars to restore lawful authority over the colonies. Any colony that supports this illegal rebellion will be considered in violation of colonial charter agreements. Surrender now and face only administrative sanctions. Continue this rebellion and face the full consequences of your actions. Lisa Webb stood in her station's command center, looking out at Jupiter's great red spot. 3,000 people depended on her to make the right choice. Behind her, Ben Carter monitored Earth's military communications, tracking the home fleet's approach to Mars. "Director, what are your orders?" asked Chief Engineer Ryan Murphy. Ryan had been with Europa Station since it was built. He knew every system, every vulnerability, every strength. Lisa thought about her daughter Kate, who was studying at Earth's university. She thought about her husband Mark, who had died in a mining accident 5 years ago. She thought about the generations of people who had worked and died to build these colonies. "Ryan, I want you to start converting our mining equipment for military use. Ben, send a message to Mars. Tell Jake Morrison that Europa Station is joining the Alliance." "And if Earth sends ships here?" Ryan asked. Lisa smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then we'll show them what happens when you threaten someone's home." Across the outer system, similar conversations were taking place. On Titan, researchers were converting atmospheric processors into defensive systems. On Ganymede, agricultural domes were being reinforced and hidden. In the asteroid belt, mining ships were disappearing into the rocks, waiting. Earth had made a mistake. They had treated the colonies as extensions of themselves for so long that they had forgotten a basic truth. Colonies become something different from their parent nations. They develop their own culture, their own priorities, their own will to survive. The home fleet was coming, confident in their superior firepower and Earth's righteous authority. What they would find was 50 years of colonial ingenuity, desperation, and the determination of people who had nowhere left to retreat. Amy Foster, now serving as the Alliance's military coordinator, sent a final message to all colony commanders. "Earth thinks they're putting down a rebellion. They're wrong. They're walking into a war with people who have already lost everything once and refuse to lose it again." The war was about to begin. Admiral Grace Stone watched Mars grow larger on her flagship's main screen. The planet looked peaceful, its red surface marked by the silver domes and towers of human civilization. She found it hard to believe that 50,000 colonists thought they could challenge Earth's authority. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from Mars Colony Beta 7, reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Paul Davis. "About time they came to their senses," Grace replied. "Put it on the main screen." Jake Morrison's face appeared on the bridge's display. Grace expected to see fear or defeat in his eyes. Instead, she saw something that made her uncomfortable: calm determination. "Admiral Stone, this is President Morrison of the Outer System Alliance. We're not surrendering. We're giving you one final chance to withdraw your fleet and return to Earth. If you proceed with this attack, you will be responsible for the consequences." Grace laughed. "President? Mr. Morrison, you're a colonial administrator who's forgotten his place. Stand down immediately or face the full power of Earth's military." "Admiral, you're about to learn the difference between power and strength," Jake replied. "Mars out." The screen went dark. Grace turned to her tactical officer, Commander Rick Taylor. "How many ships do they have?" "Sensors show approximately 40 vessels in Mars orbit, Admiral. Most appear to be converted mining ships and cargo haulers. Nothing that should pose a threat to our battle group." Grace nodded. The home fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 36 support vessels, all military grade with proper weapons and armor. The colonists had mining equipment. This would be over quickly. All ships advanced to Mars orbital zone. Prepare to disable colonial vessels and establish control of the planet. What happened next would be studied in military academies for decades. The colonial ships didn't fight like a proper navy. They didn't form battle lines or follow standard tactics. Instead, they scattered like a school of fish, using their superior knowledge of local space to vanish among the orbital debris and construction platforms surrounding Mars. Chief Tactical Officer Ryan Murphy coordinated the defense from Mars Beta 7's command center. Ryan had spent 20 years maintaining the colony's equipment. He knew every mining ship, every cargo hauler, every piece of industrial machinery in Mars orbit. More importantly, he knew what they could do when pushed beyond their original design. "Sarah, take your squadron through the Deimos approach. Use the moon shadow to mask your heat signature," Ryan ordered. Pilot Sarah Kim acknowledged from the cockpit of a converted ore hauler. Her ship looked nothing like a military vessel, but the cargo bay now held a dozen mining charges converted into guided missiles. Sarah had been flying in asteroid fields since she was 16. Dancing through Mars' orbital space was easy compared to threading between spinning rocks in the belt. Contact, called Lieutenant Davis from the Earth flagship. Colonial vessel approaching from our starboard quarter. Admiral Stone watched as Sarah's ship appeared on their sensors, moving fast and low. A single mining ship? Destroy it. The flagship's main guns opened fire, sending streams of energy toward Sarah's vessel. But Sarah wasn't where the guns were aimed. She had used a construction platform as cover, popping out just long enough to launch her converted missiles before disappearing again. The missiles weren't sophisticated by military standards, but they were designed to crack open asteroids. When they hit the flagship's shield generators, the results were spectacular. Explosions bloomed along the great ship's hull as protective systems overloaded. Shield generators down, reported Commander Taylor. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Grace stared at the damage reports. A mining ship did this? She didn't have time to process the answer before more colonial vessels appeared. They came from all directions, using debris fields and construction sites as cover. Each ship was different. Some were fast scouts that darted in to plant explosives. Others were heavy haulers that rammed Earth ships with their reinforced hulls. Engineer Maria Santos watched the battle from Europa Station's command center. Maria had been working on weapon modifications for weeks, turning industrial tools into instruments of war. Her proudest creation was a gravity manipulator, originally designed for moving asteroids. When aimed at an Earth cruiser, it could twist the ship's hull like a pretzel. Direct hit on the Earth cruiser Hamilton, reported Ben Carter. Their main drive is offline. Lisa Webb stood beside Maria watching the tactical display. Red dots representing Earth ships were disappearing one by one, while blue dots showing colonial vessels continued to move through the battle space like ghosts. How are we doing this? Lisa wondered aloud. We're not fighting their kind of war, Maria replied. They expect formations and tactics from military school. We're giving them chaos and desperation. The truth was simpler and more fundamental. Earth's Navy was designed to fight other organized militaries in open space. They had never faced an enemy that could hide among industrial infrastructure, that knew every piece of debris and every radiation shadow in the combat zone. Amy Foster had predicted this during the Alliance planning sessions. Earth's ships are bigger and stronger, but they're also predictable. They'll follow doctrine, use standard approaches, rely on their superior firepower. Will be everywhere they don't expect, doing things no military manual covers. The colonial ships were also expendable in a way Earth vessels were not. When mining ship Captain Derek Hall realized his engines were failing, he didn't try to escape. Instead, he aimed his vessel at an Earth destroyer and activated his ship's emergency self-destruct. The explosion took both ships, but Derek's sacrifice saved a dozen colonial vessels from the destroyer's weapons. Admiral, we're taking heavy losses, Commander Taylor reported. His voice was strained. The colonials are using suicide attacks. They're not suicide attacks, Grace realized. They're trading damaged ships for our healthy ones. It's a calculated strategy. She was right. Ryan Murphy was fighting a war of attrition, using colonial knowledge of local space to maximize damage to Earth forces while minimizing colonial losses. Every Earth ship destroyed was a major victory. Every colonial vessel lost was a necessary sacrifice. The battle reached its turning point when pilot Tony Blake led a squadron of asteroid mining ships against Earth's carrier group. Tony's ships were massive, designed to haul mountain-sized rocks across interplanetary distances. When they emerged from Mars's shadow, moving in perfect formation, they looked like a fleet of metal mountains. What are those ships carrying? Grace demanded. Her answer came in the form of 1,000 mining drones, each one converted to carry explosive charges. The drones swarmed over Earth's carriers like angry insects, too small and numerous for the big ship's weapons to effectively target. Within minutes, 2 Earth carriers were crippled, their flight decks torn apart by thousands of small explosions. Without fighter support, the remaining Earth ships became easy targets for colonial attack craft. Admiral, recommend immediate withdrawal, Commander Taylor said. We've lost 60% of our combat effectiveness. Grace Stone looked around her damaged bridge. Half her displays were dark, and she could smell smoke from overloaded systems. In 30 years of military service, she had never been in a battle like this. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance. He established defensive perimeter. As the Earth fleet pulled back, Ryan Murphy allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The first phase of the war was over, and the colonies had won. But he knew this was just the beginning. "Jake, the Earth fleet is retreating," he reported to Mars Colony's president. "Any word from the other colonies?" Jake asked. "Europa reports successful defense of their mining platforms. The asteroid belt operations are still hidden, but Earth hasn't found them yet. Titan says they're ready for the next phase." Jake nodded grimly. They had won the first battle, but Earth wouldn't give up easily. The home fleet would regroup, call for reinforcements, develop new tactics. The war was far from over, but something important had changed. For the first time in colonial history, Earth's military had been defeated by colonial forces. Word would spread throughout the outer system, and other colonies would realize that resistance was possible. Dr. Kevin Park, monitoring the battle from Titan, sent a message to all Alliance colonies. Phase 1 complete. Earth now knows they're in a real war. Phase 2 begins immediately. Start broadcasting to Earth's population. It's time they learned the truth about what their government has been doing in their name. Admiral Grace Stone stared at Mars through her flagship's cracked viewport. The red planet looked the same as it had hours ago, but everything had changed. She was no longer dealing with rebellious colonists. She was fighting a war against people who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The colonies had just proven that David could defeat Goliath, if David was desperate enough and smart enough to use his sling properly. 6 months after the Battle of Mars, Captain Derek Hall led the first colonial fleet beyond the asteroid belt. Derek had survived the earlier battle when his mining ship was damaged but not destroyed. Now he commanded a squadron of converted vessels heading toward Earth's outer defenses. The colonial ships moved like nothing Earth's military had ever seen. They used the solar wind for propulsion, drifted on ballistic trajectories to avoid detection, and hid among the wreckage of destroyed satellites. Derek's people had learned to think like asteroids, moving through space as invisible chunks of rock and metal. "Contact ahead," reported his navigator, Nicole Green. Nicole had been a communications specialist before the war. Now she was the Alliance's best electronic warfare officer, capable of hacking Earth's defense networks from millions of miles away. "What do you see?" Derek asked. "Earth's early warning satellites, 12 platforms in a defensive grid. But Derek, there's something else. I'm picking up civilian communications from Earth itself." Nicole had been monitoring Earth's communication networks for months, looking for military intelligence. What she found instead changed everything. "Play it," Derek ordered. The bridge filled with voices from Earth, news broadcasts, personal communications, social media posts. But the content was nothing like what the colonial leadership expected. Protesters gathered outside the colonial ministry today, demanding answers about the war in the outer system, said a news anchor. Government officials continue to claim that colonial rebels started the conflict. But leaked documents suggest a different story. Another voice. This one from a personal communication channel. "My sister works on Europa. I haven't heard from her in 3 months. The government says the colonies rebelled against lawful authority, but Sarah would never do that. Something's wrong." Derek looked at Nicole. "How long has this been going on?" "From what I can tell, about 2 months. Earth's population is starting to ask questions about the war." Derek activated his communication system and called Jake Morrison on Mars. The signal took 20 minutes to reach Mars and another 20 for Jake's response to return. "Derek, what's your status?" Jake's voice crackled through the static of interplanetary space. "We're at Earth's outer perimeter. Jake, Earth's people don't know the truth about this war. Their government has been lying to them." There was a long pause before Jake responded. "That gives us an opportunity. Nicole, can you hack into Earth's communication networks?" Nicole smiled grimly. "Jake, I've been inside their networks for weeks. They don't even know I'm there." What happened next became known as the Truth Broadcast. Nicole Green, working with a team of colonial hackers, took control of Earth's primary communication satellites. For 12 hours, Earth's population received uncensored information about the war. They learned about the impossible quotas that had been imposed on the colonies. They saw the encrypted messages discussing colonial abandonment. They heard recordings of Colonial Secretary Helen Price dismissing colonial lives as expendable. Most importantly, They learned that many of them had family and friends in the colonies who were fighting for their lives. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Dr. Lisa Park, monitoring Earth's communications from Titan, watched in amazement as protests erupted in every major city on Earth. "Jake, you need to see this. Earth's government is losing control of their own population." The protests started in the colonial districts, areas where families had relatives working in the outer system, but they spread quickly as more people learned the truth. Within days, millions of Earth citizens were demanding answers from their government. General Peter Cross, Earth's supreme military commander, found himself facing a crisis he had never trained for. Half his officers were requesting transfers, home to deal with family emergencies. Entire military units were refusing orders when they learned that their missions involved attacking colonies where their own relatives lived. "Sir, the 15th Marine Battalion has refused deployment to the asteroid belt," reported Colonel Ray Brooks. "Their commanding officer says his men won't fight their own cousins." Peter stared at the tactical displays in Earth's military command center. Red indicators showed colonial forces advancing toward Earth itself, while green indicators representing loyal Earth forces grew smaller each day. "What about the home fleet?" Peter asked. Admiral Stone reports continued losses to colonial forces. Her ships are designed for conventional warfare, not the guerrilla tactics the colonies are using. She's requesting permission to withdraw to Earth orbit. Denied. "We can't let them reach Earth." But Colonel Brooks looked uncomfortable.
"Sir, about that."
"We've received intelligence that colonial forces are already in Earth orbit." Peter felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "That's impossible. Our orbital defenses would have detected any approach." "Not if they're hiding among our own satellites and debris fields, sir. The colonies have been placing sleeper assets in Earth orbit for months, disguised as routine maintenance and cargo operations." The colonel was right. Amy Foster had planned this phase of the war carefully, using the Alliance's knowledge of space operations to infiltrate Earth's orbital infrastructure. Colonial agents had been posing as routine workers, gradually positioning weapons and communication equipment throughout Earth's satellite network. On Earth's surface, the political situation was collapsing. President Laura Fields, who had replaced the old colonial administration after massive protests, tried to negotiate with the Alliance. "Mr. Morrison, I want to end this war," she said during a direct communication with Jake. "What are your terms?" Jake appeared on screens throughout Earth's government buildings. Behind him, the lights of Mars Colony Beta 7 sparkled in the red Martian night. "President Fields, our terms haven't changed. Sustainable quotas, colonial autonomy, and representation in Earth's government. But now we have additional requirements, which are full accountability for the officials who created this crisis, the people who planned to abandon the colonies, who imposed impossible quotas, who started this war. They answer for their actions." "And if I can't guarantee that?" Jake's expression was grim. "Then this war continues until there's nothing left of either side to fight with." Earth's military situation grew worse each day. Colonial forces controlled the asteroid belt, had fortified the outer planets, and were now operating freely in Earth's own orbital space. Meanwhile, Earth's population was increasingly unwilling to support a war against their own family members. The breaking point came when a colonial strike team, led by engineer Maria Santos, seized control of Earth's primary communication satellites. Instead of destroying them, Maria used the satellites to broadcast a message directly to Earth's military forces. "Soldiers of Earth, this is Maria Santos of the Outer System Alliance. Many of you have family in the colonies. Brothers, sisters, parents, children. We're not your enemies. We're your relatives fighting for the right to survive. Your government has been lying to you about this war. We didn't rebel for conquest or glory. We rebelled because the alternative was death." The message included video footage from the colonies, showing the living conditions, the equipment failures, the constant struggle against hostile environments. It showed colonial children who looked just like Earth children. Colonial families working together to survive. Colonial communities that were unmistakably human. "We don't want to destroy Earth," Maria continued. "Earth is where our ancestors came from. It's part of our history. But we won't be treated as expendable resources. We won't be abandoned when you find richer worlds to exploit. We are human beings, and we demand to be treated as such." The broadcast ended with a list of names: Earth military personnel who had relatives in the colonies, many of whom were serving in the forces now fighting against their own families. Within hours, military units throughout Earth's forces began laying down their arms. Some officers tried to maintain discipline, but their soldiers simply walked away. The war machine that had seemed so powerful months ago crumbled as individuals chose family loyalty over military duty. Admiral Grace Stone, commanding the remnants of the home fleet, sent a final message to General Peter Cross. "Sir, I can no longer maintain fleet discipline. My crews are refusing orders, and I don't blame them. My own daughter is serving on a mining platform in the belt. I won't order her destruction." Peter Cross stood in Earth's command center, surrounded by dark displays and abandoned workstations. The war was lost not through military defeat, but through the collapse of Earth's will to fight its own children. He activated his personal communicator and sent a message to Jake Morrison on Mars. "Mr. President, on behalf of Earth's military forces, I request immediate ceasefire negotiations. The war is over." Jake Morrison, president of the Outer System Alliance, received the message in his office on Mars. Outside his window, the lights of the colony reflected off the Martian sky, creating an aurora of human achievement. The colonies had won, but Jake felt no satisfaction in victory. Too many people had died. Too much had been destroyed. Now came the harder task, building a peace that would last. The war was ending, but the real work was just beginning. The negotiation room on Ceres Station was smaller than anyone expected. Jake Morrison sat across from President Laura Fields of Earth, with only a simple metal table between them. Both leaders looked tired. The war had aged them beyond their years. "Mr. Morrison," Laura began, "I want you to know that I had nothing to do with the policies that started this war. My administration came to power because Earth's people demanded change." Jake studied her face. Laura Fields was younger than he had expected, maybe 45, with gray already showing in her brown hair. She had the look of someone who had inherited a disaster and was trying to fix it. "President Fields, I believe you. But good intentions won't bring back the people who died in this war. We need guarantees that this will never happen again." Around the table sat the leaders who had guided both sides through the conflict. Amy Foster represented the Alliance military forces. General Peter Cross spoke for what remained of Earth's armed forces. Dr. Kevin Park had flown in from Titan to provide strategic analysis. Colonial Secretary Helen Price, the woman whose policies had started the war, was notably absent. She had been arrested by her own government 2 weeks earlier. "Let's be clear about our current situation," Jake said. "The Alliance controls every significant resource source outside Earth orbit. We have functional governments on 17 worlds and stations. Our population has grown to over 2 million people. We're not rebels anymore. We're a nation." Laura nodded slowly. "Earth recognizes the independence of the Outer System Alliance. We're prepared to establish formal diplomatic relations between our governments." "That's a start," Amy Foster said. "But we need more than recognition. We need guarantees." Amy had changed during the war. The former Earth military officer was now the Alliance's defense secretary, and she understood better than anyone how quickly peace could turn into war. "What kind of guarantees?" Laura asked. Dr. Kevin Park leaned forward. Kevin had become the Alliance's chief negotiator, his academic background helping him see solutions others missed. "First, no military forces from Earth are allowed beyond the orbit of Mars without explicit Alliance permission. Second, all trade between Earth and the Alliance must be conducted on equal terms. No more extraction quotas or colonial tribute. Third, Earth agrees to pay reparations for the damage caused by the war." General Peter Cross spoke for the first time. "Those terms are harsh." "Not as harsh as abandoning 2 million people to die in space," Jake replied quietly. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Both sides had to make compromises. Earth agreed to most Alliance demands but negotiated lower reparation payments spread over 20 years. The Alliance agreed to maintain trade relationships with Earth and to share certain technologies that both sides needed. The hardest issue was what to do about the people who had created the crisis. Helen Price was already in custody, along with several other officials. Earth wanted to handle their trials internally, while the Alliance demanded that colonial representatives participate in the judicial process. These people committed crimes against Alliance citizens, Amy Foster argued. "We have a right to see justice done." Earth law must be applied to Earth citizens, General Cross responded. Jake had a different idea. Joint tribunals. Earth judges and Alliance representatives working together. The trials are public, broadcast to both Earth and the colonies. Everyone sees that justice is being done. It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely, but both sides could accept it. The real work began after the formal treaties were signed. Engineer Maria Santos led the reconstruction efforts that transformed both Earth and the Alliance territories. The old relationship of extraction and exploitation was replaced by genuine cooperation. Maria's first project was a joint research station at the Jupiter-Sun L4 point, where scientists from both Earth and the colonies worked together on fusion power research. The station became a symbol of what human cooperation could achieve when politics didn't interfere. The technology we're developing here will benefit everyone, Maria explained to a joint Earth Alliance press conference. Clean, unlimited power for both Earth cities and colonial settlements. This is what we should have been doing all along. But the most important changes were happening in the people themselves. Earth's population, shocked by revelations about colonial conditions, demanded reforms in their own government. The old colonial authority was disbanded and replaced by a Department of Interplanetary Relations that treated the Alliance as an equal partner. On the Alliance worlds, a new generation was growing up that saw Earth not as an oppressor, but as the place their grandparents had come from. Trade relationships developed into cultural exchanges. Students from Mars studied at Earth universities, while Earth researchers worked on colonial projects. Lisa Webb, now serving as the Alliance's Secretary of Commerce, watched cargo ships moving between Earth and Europa Station. The ships carried not just raw materials, but finished goods, art, music, and ideas flowing in both directions. My daughter Kate is graduating from Earth University next month, Lisa told her assistant. She's planning to return to Europa to start a biotechnology company. She wants to develop medical treatments using resources from both Earth and the colonies. It was a pattern repeated throughout both societies. The war had taught everyone that separation led to conflict, while cooperation led to prosperity. 5 years after the peace treaties were signed, Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the Generation ship Endeavour. The massive vessel was humanity's first joint Earth Alliance project, designed to carry colonists to the Centauri system. "Are you having second thoughts?" asked Amy Foster, who had joined him at the viewing window. Jake watched as supply ships from both Earth and the Alliance docked with the Endeavour. In a few weeks, the ship would begin its journey to the stars, carrying 10,000 volunteers from both worlds. "No second thoughts," Jake said. "This is what we were meant to become. Not Earth ruling the colonies, not the Alliance dominating Earth, but humanity working together to reach the stars." Amy smiled. The war was terrible, but maybe it was necessary. Maybe we had to almost destroy each other before we could learn to work together. Jake thought about all the people who had died during the conflict. Derek Hall, who had sacrificed his ship to save others. The miners who had worked impossible hours to keep the colonies running. The Earth soldiers who had finally refused to fight their own families. "I hope we never forget what the war cost us," Jake said. "The price of human conflict is too high. We're better than that." In the Endeavour schools, children from both Earth and the Alliance learned together. They studied the history of human expansion into space, including the recent war, but they also learned about cooperation, diplomacy, and the shared heritage that united all humanity. 10-year-old Sarah Park, Kevin's daughter, raised her hand during a history lesson. "Teacher, why did Earth and the colonies fight each other instead of working together from the beginning?" Her teacher, Maria Santos, who had left engineering to become an educator, thought carefully before answering. "Because people sometimes forget that we're all part of the same human family. The war happened because some people saw others as resources to be used instead of people to be respected. Our job is to make sure that never happens again." Sarah nodded seriously. "So when we get to Centauri, we'll remember that everyone is important?" "That's exactly right, Sarah. When we build new worlds, we'll do it together as equals." Outside the classroom windows, stars filled the view. Somewhere among those distant suns was humanity's next home, waiting to be discovered. But this time, humans would reach the stars not as conquerors or colonists, but as explorers carrying the hard-won wisdom of those who had learned that cooperation was stronger than conflict. Jake Morrison, now in his 60s and serving as the Endeavour's civilian administrator, spent his evenings writing in his journal. He wanted future generations to understand how close humanity had come to destroying itself, and how they had chosen a better path. Today marks the 5th anniversary of the Treaty of Ceres, he wrote. Earth and the Alliance have become true partners. Trade flows freely between our worlds. Students and workers move back and forth as easily as if we were all citizens of the same nation, because in the end we are. The generation ship Endeavour launches next month, carrying people from both Earth and the colonies to establish humanity's first interstellar settlement. They go not as representatives of competing nations, but as members of the human species, united in purpose and committed to building something better than what we left behind. Our last decision was declaring war on Earth. Our best decision was choosing peace over victory, cooperation over domination, and hope over fear. That is the lesson we send with the Endeavour to the stars. That humanity is strongest when it remembers that we are all part of the same family, sharing the same small universe under the same distant stars. The Endeavour's engines ignited 3 weeks later, beginning humanity's first interstellar journey. On board were 10,000 people who carried with them the lessons of war and peace, conflict and cooperation, the bitter knowledge of what humans could do to each other, and the sweet hope of what they could accomplish together. Behind them, Earth and the Alliance continued to grow closer, united by